Hey, hi, howdy, Derek Parker DP here. We've got another 2025 mock draft headed your way. We've upgraded from way too early to just plain too early, seeing as how we're only a few games into the college season, but this should at least be a way for people to familiarize themselves with some of the prospects, how they're faring through just a few games, and get a little temp check on how NBA games are going too. I've ran a tankathon simulation. Again, a lot of these players, a lot of these teams even won't be here come draft night, but we're going to do our best to draft accordingly. Again, this may seem just a little reactionary to the start of the college season. It is. I'm not someone that does a ton of draft work prior to the college season. I like to do a lot of it then, and then kind of delve back on the high school tape after. So I'm working with what I've got. Let's jump into it. We'll kick it off with the bottom of the league Toronto Raptors, staying true to the odds and landing the number 1 pick, and making an easy decision here to grab Duke's Cooper Flagg. Despite some growing pains in late game turnovers and bad 3-point shooting, Flagg has done very little to deter me from ranking him number 1 still. If anything, I think his combination of size, fluidity, and defensive versatility has looked even better at the collegiate level than I would have thought to this point. I expect him to tighten it up as the season goes on and retain his hold on being the projected number 1 pick. It would be a no-brainer pick for any team really, especially Toronto, given they could use Flagg as a combo forward alongside Scotty Barnes to create one of the better duos in the entire league down the line. At number 2, we have the Wizards grabbing the player who I think has done the most for his stock through just a few games, BYU's Igor Demon. At 6'8", we weren't quite sure how Demon's alleged jumbo creator skill set would look at the college level, but through 3 games, it's safe to say he looks like one of the better and more poised freshmen in the country. 17 points, 7.7 assists, 4 rebounds while shooting 64% overall and 50% from 3. If he can keep it up against real competition, he'll be a shoo-in as a top 3 pick. I think this is another no-brainer pick here for Washington. They obviously value size and length and are in need of some long-term playmaking, and there's maybe no more valuable archetype than a 6'8 scoring and passing guard. Demon could slot in next to Bub Carrington, Koulibaly, and Alex Sarr nicely for the next half-decade. Interesting pick here at number 3 for several reasons. The down Philadelphia 76ers grabbing Rutgers forward Ace Bailey. We've yet to even see Bailey take the court for Rutgers due to injury, and the Sixers have been one of the league's biggest surprises at just 2-9 on the season, with their trio of stars yet to see the hardwood together. I have little doubt they'll eventually find their winning ways again this season and make a late playoffs push, but just as a fun thought experiment, I'd go Ace Bailey here. A 6'9" wing with what should be adept scoring ability at all 3 levels, Bailey would be somewhat of a long-term punch at the 3 that they'd hoped Paul George would be when they signed him. This Philly team already has its guard shored up in Maxey and Rookie of the Year leading Jared McCain, as well as its frontcourt superstar in Embiid. I think Bailey makes a lot of sense in the middle there as a forward who can fill it up and get his when needed. At number 4, we have the Charlotte Hornets picking up Texas guard Trey Johnson, who pound for pound has probably been the best freshman player in the country so far, if not the best period. He's a hyper-scoring shooting guard through 3 games averaging a blistering 25 points, 3 rebounds, and 2.7 assists, shooting 57% from the field and an even better 58% from 3. I do expect these stats to obviously taper off some once Big 12 play hits, but regardless, Johnson looks like a smooth, confident, and talented future NBA guard. In Charlotte, he would slot in nicely between LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller as another oversized scorer who can play off ball and get you a bucket when needed. It'd be a 3-headed threat of players that can all score from range and do plenty else in moderation. I think Charlotte could stand to add a versatile frontcourt piece in the 2025 draft, but didn't love their options here at 4 and opted to go with Johnson. At number 5, we have the Utah Jazz grabbing the best player available in Rutgers guard Dylan Harper, who has seen an interesting few games as Rutgers' lead playmaker. An average of 22 points on 55% shooting is certainly elite, but I don't think Harper to this point has looked the part of a jumbo point guard, opposed to a combo scorer, which I think was some of his allure, or at least why I had him number 2 coming into the college season. In Utah's case, grabbing another guard who sits between point and shooting guard likely sends shivers up their spine, but this would be their most talented add in some time to me, and they'd likely bank on Harper becoming their lead guard and scorer at some point down the line, with the right development. 6th overall, we have the critically injured New Orleans Pelicans taking a high upside swing on guard-forward hybrid VJ Edgecombe, who despite having a weird start to the season should still remain high on boards due to potential alone. A high flyer at 6'5", Edgecombe has kicked off his season at Baylor with 9 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, nearly 2 steals and over a block per game. Really decent counting stats all things considered, but he's shooting 34% overall and an abysmal 15% from 3. Not great. Perhaps worst of all, there's still really little answers about what he actually is. His handle hasn't looked guard-esque, he can't shoot like a wing, not exactly big or physical enough to play full-time forward. The Pelicans here grab their first high-ceiling prospect in some time, and bank on using his innate athleticism and feel to turn him into some sort of generator, be it alongside Zion Williamson or others. 7th overall, we have the Brooklyn Nets, somehow not choosing via their own selection, but instead using the Milwaukee Bucks, just as we all saw coming prior to the season's start. The Nets have surprised early with some big wins, but I still assert that they really need to move off some veterans and make a play for a top 3 pick in this draft. It is simply too good not to. At 7, I have Brooklyn taking a massive swing on Illinois guard Kasparas Giacoussionis, who projects to be a lead guard in the NBA if a few things fall his way developmentally. Through 3 games, the 6'6 guard has scored 9 points, dished a whopping 7.7 assists, and grabbed 6 boards on some okay to meh shooting splits. 7 right now is probably a bit rich for Jaku, but I think it projects to be a really solid jumbo guard down the line. And for Brooklyn, who theoretically should have all the time in the world, recently kicking off their rebuild, I like a home run swing on a high ceiling player rather than a decent role guy. And speaking of decent role guys, we have probably my favorite pairing in this entire mock, the much improved Detroit Piston taking Duke's Con Knipple at number 8. The Pistons finally are playing with some oomph, amassing a 5-8 record through 13 games, but there's still work to be done on the NBA draft front to make this team a complete one. There were rumblings Knipple would be a monster in the preseason, and so far those are seeming more legit by the game, 17 points on 42% shooting and being one of the Blue Devils' best players as a freshman so far this year. Detroit could really use his savviness as a scorer alongside Cade Cunningham and even Jaden Ivey in the backcourt. He's got a little bit of length to work with, he should continue to be a really great and versatile 3-point shooter, and could thrive in this Pistons core for a long time. At 9, we have the Portland Trail Blazers, a team I just continue to not know what to do with in regards to the NBA draft. It has a host of players that should consider its young core, none of which have really impressed me greatly in their first few seasons. I've gone with 6'8 wing Carter Bryant here on account of Portland having some of its backcourt and frontcourt shored up. I figured you couldn't go wrong with Bryant, who projects to be a pretty versatile wing. He's averaging 9 points on near 60% shooting in just 17 minutes per game, and has showed some real flashes of defensive impact. His opportunity and counting stats will need a slight boost in order for him to come out as a lottery talent, but I like what I've seen so far. At number 10, we have the Miami Heat taking a shot on Nolan Traore, a French prospect currently playing for St. Quentin, an interesting selection on a few fronts. It's been a while since the Heat have selected a prospect with as high a ceiling as Traore has, and even with his down start to the season, he still offers one of the best prospects in this class to me. With St. Quentin, he's averaged 11 points on just 33% shooting, hitting a quarter of his threes with nearly 3 turnovers per game. I'd say his draft stock is a bit wounded at the moment, but he's got plenty of time to right the ship, a history of being really good, and the scoring and passing talent still jumps out at various points in his games. Here, the Heat take a bit of a reclamation project, hoping to turn him into an all-around guard many know he can be. At number 11, we have a pick that I really like, despite the Mavericks probably not being here when it's all said and done, Georgia forward Asa Newell. At 6'11", Newell has really impressed me so far this season, averaging over 17 points with some traditional style post play and rim running, in addition to some really stingy rim protection, over 3 blocks per game. So far, he's looked a bit like a smaller true 5, but he's had the green light from 3 and has been able to show those shots off before, making him a really intriguing ad for NBA teams. With Dallas, Newell could function a little bit like Lively does alongside Luka Doncic, getting some interior buckets around the ring, putting the ball on the floor from the high post. If you could ever find a reliable 3-ball, that would be a great weapon for the Mavs to have in tandem with or staggering with Derek Lively. At 12, we again have the Jazz, this time taking our third and final Duke freshman, center Kaman Malawach. At 7'1", Malawach has seen a decent start to the season, averaging 9 points and rebounds, in addition to nearly 2 blocks per game, all while shooting a white-hot 80% overall. In terms of center prospects, generally, Malawach is a strong one. He's lengthy, has good rim protection and shot block timing, he can rim run with ease, and in international play, he has even been able to hit the occasional 3-ball. The Jazz have loaded up on guards, wings, and forward prospects in the last few years. I like them taking a chance here on a high-floor center, especially if a guy like Walker Kessler isn't long for the franchise, which it sounds like he might not be. At number 13, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder selecting via the LA Clippers pick and taking another player that fits their patented do-it-all style, Noah Esenge. Esenge, a spindly 6'10" forward, has been phenomenal in Euro Cup play so far, averaging 13 points on 57% shooting with 40% three-point shooting, adding rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks galore. The Thunder add another really talented project pick here, backloading their already loaded roster with another player who could emerge very solidly in a few years. He could create jumbo lineups, moonlight as a small ball 5, and more, all while offering some of the handling, shooting, defense, and even playmaking that OKC covets. And finally, we have the San Antonio Spurs capping the video by taking UConn wing Liam McNeely at number 14. The Husky has long had the reputation as a savvy scorer and shooter, and has put pen to paper through 3 games with 14 points and 8 rebounds per game, while shooting 48% overall and 41% from 3 on 6 attempts. This likely isn't the flash that most San Antonio fans are hoping for in the 2025 draft, but there's worse outcomes than getting a tall wing who projects to be a career 40% shooter alongside Victor Wembanyama for the next half-decade. The Spurs seem to have kicked the tires on adding a proven star to the roster in the coming seasons, and McNeely adds a gluey piece that can slot in next to nearly anyone, be it in the starting lineup or off the bench.